Oh yeah, I played in Marlboro
I know, I saw you
with
guys.
Joey. Yeah, with
Yeah,
Joey.
with Brett and Thomas, right?
Yeah,
That was such a
yeah.
cool show. I mean,
Oh man,
I remember that show. Like you guys. Well, when I looked at you guys, it was so much fun. You know,
that
it's
band was so much fun. That's one of ah, I loved that band.
yeah, and it seemed so comfortable. I
Yeah,
mean, each one of you, you know, you just see Joey play, and he's, of course, it's just
yeah. He's always like that. I mean, there's so much joy in his playing that
yeah,
you just can't help but feel that way with him.
yeah. So yeah, I remember that. That's basically the only time I saw it, I think. Did I? Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I think that was the only time we played in Slovenia.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to come with the new
Fan of
group
yours
for really a long time, like since the first records with Tony Malaby, the first record with Tony,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh
I've
man.
played with Tony quite a lot,
Oh, he's amazing.
and you know, like when I saw that you have that record years ago with him, I was like, yeah. And then I fell into your music, and I just love it. I mean, I have all the albums,
Well,
and
what's interesting about Tony is that he's probably more known for what would you say free playing, right?
yeah,
And but the thing is, he's such an incredibly well-rounded musician that at the time, we had just gotten to know each other around that time, and we hadn't even Liberation. We hadn't even
yeah,
joined that band yet. But I think yeah, he had joined with Paul's band. That's how I was getting to know Tony better. But I wanted him to play on it just because a lot of my stuff is more kind of tonal and
yeah.
form oriented, and and I knew he would just play amazing on it. And he even said afterwards, he goes, "Man, I'm so glad I'm on this record because nobody knows I can play like this."
Yeah, yeah. I did an interview with Tony like 3 weeks ago, like that, and I haven't. It's not online yet, but he said like you know he had a problem because he can play, of course, everything, but like the tonal guys were like, yeah, no, it's Tony, and the free guys were
Yeah.
like, well, he's still not free, you know, in the sense, but he can play like, you know,
Well, but Tony and I have another musician friends of mine is like we're too how's the saying goes, we're too out for the in guys and too in for the out guys. It's
okay,
just like could we just play music and shut up?
exactly, exactly. Anyway, I first want to congratulate you on your last album, the
Oh,
new one. I mean,
thanks.
it's like 3 weeks old, right? Blue
Yeah.
has a range,
Uh-huh.
and I saw that like Steve has a new album out. I was like, yeah,
Oh
finally,
man.
finally, man. I was where first of all, like, how did you get this band together? I mean, I guess Ben Allison was kind of the obvious choice
Yeah.
almost, but
Well, yeah, I've been in Ben's band since 2005.
yeah.
And we've become really close friends ever since. He played on a trio record of mine
Hmm.
about, gosh, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Oh, um, but and so when I was thinking about this record, I thought, yeah, I want Ben to do this because he helps me a lot. He helped co-produce. He mixed it and did an incredible job.
Ah, he makes the
Yeah.
record. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Cool.
amazing. But I've been in Jon Cowherd's Mercy Project since 2012, and
Ah,
that's
okay.
yeah. So that's the connection, and Brian is in that,
Yeah, and
and
Brian and
so
John
that's
played together.
yeah. And
Yeah.
we did like 2 or 3 tours those first couple of years, and then we were just doing kind of different kind of one-off gigs here and there. And then Brian asked me to guest with the fellowship one week at the Vanguard in
Really?
2015. Yeah,
Oh,
just
wow.
not necessarily join the band, but just to be a part of.
How was that?
Oh, it was so fun.
I love that group. The music,
It
it's
was
amazing.
it was incredible. It was amazing.
Oh,
but
wow.
but so I mean, I love John's music, and so when I started thinking about the next project, I kind of pretty much decided right away that I wanted piano and I wanted John, because
Yeah.
I had such a connection with him. I love the way he writes, love the way he plays, and then the way just from having played in his band with he and Brian and Patitucci or
Yeah.
Tony Shearer, depending on who's available. There was just such a connection that I knew that, and then I didn't even know if, in the back of my mind, I thought it'd be great to have Brian, but he's hard to pin down, because he gets so busy with stuff, and he doesn't live in New York, so there's even a logistical element to it, But as it turned out, when I booked the studio dates, which were 5 months in advance, I asked Jon, "Are you available for these 2 dates?" He goes, "Yes," and he goes, "And as a matter of fact, I'm playing with Brian's other band, Life Cycles, at the Blue Note. So Brian might, you should check in with him because he might stay, and that's what happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of like, okay, this is exactly what I had in mind, and I started. Then music started just kind of come. I started writing tunes, and when I write, they usually kind of come in waves like that, where I'll write.
But you knew that you were writing for a quartet, like
Yeah,
exactly with a piano in mind, or?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Because it's your
sometimes
first record with a piano player as a leader, right?
exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I've done trio
yeah,
or had horn on, some tracks,
yeah,
but and it's not even just about piano, but it's Jon specifically, just his sensibilities, and I knew that and everything I kind of imagined happened in terms of just their intuition and the
yeah.
way they listen, and then more, just like everything just blossomed in a way that just made it so easy just to put
Yeah,
everything
you
together.
sound really together, as if you're like, when I listened to the album, for me it was it reminded me like of Lyle Mays, Pat Metheny kind of vibe, that you're really together, and it sounds like a band. It's like no egos. That's the idea I got. It's really about music in a way.
Well, though the only people that hadn't played together was that Ben had never played with Jon and Brian, but I wasn't worried about
Yeah,
that because Ben is also just an amazing, intuitive, great listener,
yeah.
and and then once we started playing, it's like he and Brian were right there. Um, but yeah, and so somebody else mentioned that. Oh, did you do arrangements? Because but we really didn't.
Oh,
That's
wow.
the thing, is a lot of that just kind of happened through everybody listening and certain elements coming together. I
Yeah,
mean, because we hadn't played as a band, gigs as a band, and the music was new. We did several takes of
yeah.
things just to kind of get it to a place to where like everybody was understanding what was happening where.
What the idea is.
But there's a couple of tracks where the practice take is what we used
Oh, wow.
because it just had so much vibe and
Yeah.
spontaneity.
Now you wrote some really amazing tunes. That one ballad on acoustic, Fern.
Oh, Fern's guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you write that one? And the sound of the guitar, it's amazing also on that one.
Oh, well, that guitar. Well, that's why I named it
Yeah.
Fern's guitar, because that guitar is a gem. It's just incredible. It's a 1959 Martin
Oh,
acoustic,
wow.
and so my partner Monica, that's her mother is Fern, and she had bought the guitar like a year after that, after it was made,
Oh, wow.
and so it stayed in the family all those years, and it got neglected and refurbished, and
Yeah.
whoever actually did the repairing did an amazing job.
Wow.
But but I'd like to. I played acoustic on different records,
Yeah.
but that ballad, I actually wrote the ballad on electric.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I was at a sound check with Ben. We were with Ben's band. We were playing some gigs in the Midwest, and we were at a radio station doing a sound check, and I just started playing those first two figures,
Yeah.
and I said to Ben, "Hey Ben, play this, D to G, D to G, and then E flat, and then it's
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah." So I came up with the A section, just kind of at that time, and then I wrote the bridge a little later.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it became apparent pretty quickly that it was going to sound really good on acoustic.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
how do you choose between, I mean, I love you on acoustic, by the way. Like, I mean, people know you a lot, like, on electric guitar, I would say, but, like, your acoustic playing on some records with singers or,
Right.
you know, or it's amazing. Like, how do you prefer electric or acoustic? I know that's a hard question to ask because,
No, I know.
but
I mean, I'm probably more comfortable on electric just because that's most of what I play. But however, I'll give you an example of why I love acoustic and
mhm,
how, it's not that I'm comfortable enough on acoustic. It's
sure.
just that I think the reason why I don't play it live is just it's logistically hard. I never loved the way that they sound with pickups
No, it's terrible. Yeah.
and it's just kind of like, and then you're carrying two guitars around, and although that's really not such a big deal, but it is if you're traveling
If
by
you're
air.
traveling, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, traveling by air.
Yeah, when, right?
Do people do that?
Yeah,
Or,
I think now in September they're already starting like
oh boy. But anyway, so there's, so do you know about this label Nouvelle?
new
It's it's
phone.
it's it's a record label that it's a bit kind of based in France, but they have a producer here in the States
Mhm.
that heads the recording sessions, and they only release vinyl.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, and so but actually Ben, they originally, when I first was on a project of Nouvelle's, they originally asked Ben to head a project, and we had this trio with he and I and Ted Nash,
Hmm. Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
right,
Oh, that's
and then
yeah. Daddy did that record.
well, I'll get to that
Oh
because
yeah,
the
okay.
first record we did was for Nouvelle, and it was all Jim Hall music,
Yeah,
and
that's
and
incredible.
and and I did it all on acoustic, the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The reason why I actually took the electric to the studio that day, but I also brought the steel string and the nylon string. And then when we were kind of sound checking, yeah, I love Jim Hall's playing so much that when we were sound checking, I'm playing electric, and I thought to myself, man, it's going to take everything I can do to not try to go to the Jim Hall zone with my electric.
Yeah,
So I told the guys, so can we sound check a little with acoustic? And we did it, and I just was immediately like, if you're cool with this, I want to play acoustic the whole record because it took me away from it. It made me in
yeah.
a way sound more like myself for that particular project.
Project. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
did you listen? Speaking of Jim Hall, did you listen a lot to Jim or
Oh yeah, I mean, since I was 18 years old.
and transcribed him and stuff and everything? Or
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've transcribed a lot of different
yeah,
musicians and not just guitar
yeah,
players.
sure.
But and I even tell students, I say, it's transcription is good as long as you don't become obsessed with it and just like,
Just do it.
because there comes a point where after you've kind of figured out how a lot of things go together and you assimilate vocabulary, and you have to start putting things together your way.
Yeah.
And but by using the information that you've gathered from transcription. But but also, and I also tell, I say, when you're listening to records and you can sing along with the solo, that's transcription
That's it.
because
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
internalized. Maybe you couldn't just sit down and play it on your instrument, but you've internalized it. And I found that a lot of music that I've listened to over the years, like Joe Henderson,
Yeah.
I'm sure his solos would be crazy to try to play on guitar.
Probably. Yeah. I never did Joe actually,
But
but
I've listened to him so much that
yeah.
I know, like sometimes I'll hear something, I go, oh, well, that's kind of Joe Henderson like. And it's because it just there's no way you can listen to somebody that much and not have it affect you.
Yeah. Yeah. But who did you listen in the beginning? I mean, when I hear you now, I know it's Steve. When I hear
Oh,
records
good.
with, yeah, no, but because of the sound, and your phrasing, it's kind of this monkish piano phrasing in a way sometimes. Yeah, all these intervals and lines you do,
Yeah.
it's still really fluid. But on the other hand, I hear like, I don't know, some of this Schofield's grit or
Yeah,
teeny
right.
flow.
And
So who were
and
the guys you listened to?
well, the thing, I mean, I get that comparison a lot, and I feel flattered by it.
Mm,
But that's to say, in a way, I also sometimes feel like, well, man, that's just like the tip of the iceberg.
yeah,
It's because I listen to all the people that influenced those guys.
sure.
I'm not even 10 years younger than them. So so even though I feel, I look up to them, I listen, to all the good, Jim Hall and Pat Martino
Yeah,
and Abercrombie a lot,
yeah, I
and
love John.
and oh, he was incredible, and the list goes on and on,
Yeah,
and then not to mention like Stevie Wonder and the Beatles and Hendrix
yeah,
and Albert Beebe and Freddie King,
yeah,
and so the thing is sometimes, yeah, I mean, it's just like because I've listened to different, like I was saying about Joe Henderson, because I've listened to Pat Ansco and all these other people,
yeah.
different things are going to come out, but just the way it's all kind of distilled, I guess my touch or whatever ends up kind of
I,
resembling. Although I don't feel like, it's funny because when I listen to them, I say, I don't really play like that. I don't play like them.
no, no, it's like, but
I don't play as good as them.
oh, come on. I listened yesterday to, here in the evening, to Ben's That Little Stars record.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, the stars are very different with
yeah,
the
yeah,
one with Brandon. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I think you played like two solos on there, on the I'm a Jealous Guy, the Lennon song, right? Is on there.
Oh, that little things. That's
Little
little things
Things,
from the
yeah.
Lord. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was like, damn, man, that solo,
Oh
it's like,
man.
that's like a perfect solo. You play around and it's just like, I was like, it's like true composed solo for me when I listened to it
Oh
yesterday,
man. Well,
Seriously, like, it makes
that
sense.
this kind of brings back what you were mentioning earlier is that both Ben and John and Brian's actually also Brian's composing, I think, influenced kind of the way I was writing at the time,
Mm,
the last year when I
yeah.
wrote five. How many of those tunes did I write last year? There's 9 tunes on the record, and three. So I wrote 6
Six.
last year. Language of Love I actually
You
recorded
did it,
on,
yeah, with Ben,
yeah,
right?
and Ben.
Yeah.
So that's the oldest one, and then Blue Language and Sikior were written maybe a couple of years before, a few years before the others. But but so the most recent compositions on the record, I think, reflect elements of Ben's writing and John
Mm,
and Brian's.
mm.
Just because, like you said, I'm knowing who I'm going to play with and
Yeah.
just how much I love all of their writing.
And then you have this one free composition, like free, I mean, free tune signpost stuff ahead.
Oh yeah. So that,
This is incredible, by the way. You should do like an album just like,
you,
like,
I've thought about that, especially after we did it, because so I can tell you sort of how
yeah,
that tune
please,
came
yeah.
about. I mean, I that figure at the beginning and at the end, I just came up with that, I don't know, a month or two before we recorded, and then I thought, at first I thought maybe I can write a tune around that, and then I thought, hey, that just might be a good kickoff for a free tune,
Oh,
just
wow.
just something that just kind of kicks us off into the tune. So I brought it in and I, told the guys, what it was about. And I think we did 4 takes and all of them are completely different. And I think that was the last one because as the more takes we were doing, at first it was a little more kind of esoteric and
Yeah,
impressionistic. And then it just started to morph into a little more energy and groove at
yeah.
times. So that's I think that's the 4th take, and I mean everybody does a little bit of editing and cleaning things up on their records, heads or
Sure.
whatever, but that one, I think like the improvisation is what we
Oh,
did. I mean,
wow.
there's no, you know, so, and that's, yeah. And even there was another, I think one of the other takes was really cool too, you know.
Yeah.
And even the other ones had these moments that were amazing. But it would be fun just to go in the studio, just
Yeah.
like take one day and just like do 6 straight hours of just free tune after free tune and just see you just a la Miles
Yeah.
and
Because
then
you sound
yeah.
also, you sound so cool on that. I think you would be like, you
Man,
know,
the amazing thing, I mean, Jon, both, I mean, all those guys,
yeah, yeah.
their ears, I mean, Jon, every time I would start a figure, Jon was just like, it's like he just knew where I was going to go.
Oh, wow.
I remember when we listened back to that, I was just kind of, I was kind of blown away with how I said, well, it sounds like we almost wrote that,
Yeah, it sounds like
you
a
know?
true composed piece almost. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. No, it's really a good record. I mean, at first I wanted to say that it's like I'm really
Oh,
happy,
man.
and
Thank you.
I hope people will get get it at least somehow out of it nowadays. That
Yeah, I hope it, you know, I mean, in this world, there's so much music that gets
yeah,
put
it's
out,
true.
but I
Yeah,
hope
definitely
that gets heard.
deserves
Yeah.
to be heard. Definitely. So, but first, Steve, I want to ask you. Just want to go a little bit back.
Hmm.
I listen to your music like I wrote to you like these days and past week. I mean, I have your albums as a leader, but then I knew your stuff as a sideman. Like I have lots of the records with Alexis Cuadrado and Arthur
Oh,
Cal
yeah.
and all of Ben Allison's records, basically. I think almost with you. And but then I found out a very interesting Steve, which was like 90s. In this, I couldn't believe it. If it's you with these guys, Brandon Fields and this LA scene. I was like, damn, man, is this the same guy? Like, how
That's
did you,
me.
yeah, how did you enter this? I mean, it's great music, don't get me wrong. Like, Tom Coster's record is really good, but it's like so not what you do now. So, how did you
I
start
know.
with that? I mean, how
Well,
did you fall
okay.
into that?
So I have to start even a little before that because I grew up in Kansas City.
Yeah,
That's where I'm from. And and I'm not I'm a lot of guys go to music school and then when they're still really young they'll move to like New York or wherever, you
yeah,
know. But I actually stayed in Kansas City well into my 20s because I was playing all the time. You know, I was in there's such great musicians there and you know, well, you know, Pat's
yeah.
from there and I was playing with a lot of the musicians that he had played with
Oh, wow.
years later, you know. But but I was just learning so much that I kind of even though music school is great for like sight reading
Yeah.
music theory, but I really had an environment where I was learning and growing
Okay.
and then getting just on the job experience, you know, playing with in groups that were challenging. Some were all original music.
Oh, wow.
There was one band that was kind of R&B and blues, and another one that was like standards and bebop and different jazz tunes. So I mean, that's a big part of why I didn't leave Kansas City
Yeah.
till later. But instead of going to New York, which I had visited a few times in the 80s, but I just, being from the Midwest, I didn't feel like I was kind of ready for that
Yeah.
musically and otherwise. So I had some friends in California and I moved to the Bay Area, you know, in the late 80s. And I lived there about 4 years. And when I was there, I played in Paul McCandless's band,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which I'm on his record Premonition.
Yeah. That's
And
incredible. Yeah.
I'm playing mostly acoustic on that record
Yeah.
actually.
I've played
Yeah.
with Paul a lot, like
Oh,
6 years. We toured, and he's one of my
oh
favorite
man.
guys
He's one of my favorite musicians ever.
yeah,
Really.
one of the most kind musicians I've met and played with.
He's
Really, like,
amazing. He is
sweetheart.
he's a classic example of one of those guys that's pretty well, you know, very well known,
Yeah,
but still underappreciated, I believe, you
very
know.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
such a
But any
virtuoso. I mean, yeah.
and then I also played in Jeff Beal's band
Yeah, I saw
and
that
a
too. Yeah.
keyboard player named Kit Walker, who his band and all these bands kind of had the same rhythm section, you know, it was kind of his thing. So so after 4 years in the Bay Area, Jeff Beal had moved to LA, and he would call me and say, "Hey, I got a couple of gigs. would you mind coming down and playing with, you know? And I'd get there, and John Patitucci was on bass, and you know, all
Yeah.
these guys. Weckel
Oh,
was playing drum, you
yeah.
know.
Oh, wow.
So after doing a couple of gigs, I just thought, well, I never really planned on moving to LA, but I was kind of getting knowing, you know, getting to know really great musicians in the scene.
Mm.
And I thought, well, why don't I just sublet and spend some time here? And so I ended up moving there for 2 years before I moved to New York. And
Okay.
that's how those, you know, and actually in that 2 years time, it was kind of perfect timing because, you know, I would say more of my guitar influences are more kind of New York kind of improvisers, or
Mm.
however you want to, or ECM, or, you know, European type, you know.
Yeah.
But but so there was kind of a lack of that kind of guitar or guitarist in LA. So I ended
LA.
up
Yeah.
getting gigs that people wanted, you know. I filled the gap somehow,
Wow. Okay.
barely. But but then a drummer friend of mine, really great drummer, Mike Hyman, he was moving back to New York, and he needed a roommate. And I was at this crossroads where I was just like, man, I got to do this or I'll never do it. And
Yeah.
so next thing you know, I'm here 25 years. So
Amazing. Yeah. And what a career already. I mean, like you've done so much amazing stuff
I've
already.
been
So
really lucky.
yeah. I mean, like, well, but deservedly, like, you know, you are really good and recognizable and made your own sound and as a composer as well. So I think that's how it should be. But speaking of the early years, I have to go through this two guys
Yeah. Oh,
like
totally cool.
Paul Motian and Charlie Haden. Like Paul Motian for me. I mean, he's one of my top three heroes as a composer and a musician. And uh, you spent quite a long time with playing with him, right? And
Yeah.
how did, first of all, this happen, and how was it for you to be part of that?
Well, both Charlie and Paul, and just before I go into all this, so that, remember I was telling you about the Nouvelle label?
Yeah.
They asked me to do a record of Charlie and Paul's music, and I did that a couple years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, and it came out. And we did it with all musicians that had played with
Yeah.
those guys too.
Yeah.
And then also Nouvelle, we did a Jon Cowherd record with Nouvelle as well. So
Oh, okay. I'll have
anyway,
to check the label.
that's,
Oh, cool.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
So anyway, so those guys I had also been listening to those guys since I was a teenager. I think originally on the Keith Jarrett Quartet records, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly. Yeah. Or
specifically that album Shades,
yeah.
you know, whew, and all those records are amazing. But
The quartets are amazing. I mean,
yeah,
everything he did. Yeah.
so they were already, you know, heroes in my mind, and I was aware, you know, that Paul had started the Electric Bebop Band before I even moved to New York, and I remember thinking to myself, oh man, it'd be so fun to be in that band.
Oh, wow.
But he's got two great guitar players, so he doesn't need anybody.
It was who? Monder and Shepik, right? Ben and
It was Rosenwinkel and Shepik.
Rosenwinkel. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I think the first, from what I was been told, and I hope I have this right. I think the first time Paul got together with the idea of doing it, he had Dave Tronzo and Ben Monder,
Dave
and
Tronzo. Oh,
yeah, and
wow.
I think they just played like maybe like at his apartment or something, and but I don't know like how it morphed into. I think maybe Paul let go of it for a little while and then
Mm-hmm.
came back to it and was recommended these other guys.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
anyway, uh, in 1997, I was touring with Madeline Peru,
mm-hmm.
and you know the singer, and
Yeah, sure.
she had her first record was out, and we were doing some summer touring in Europe, and my roommate at the time in New York, um, I left him my itinerary, and I said, if anything really important comes up, you know, like you can give whoever my number, you know. Or, so So it turns out that Paul called, and
Wow.
and my roommate gave him my number. I think we were in Norway at the time, and there was a message at the front desk of Paul Motion call. So I remember thinking, what? So I called him back, because I waited until later in the day, because
Oh, cool.
and he answered the phone and he said, yeah, I wanted to see if you could do this tour. I guess Matheny had recommended me to him because
Oh, wow.
I'd gotten to know, Pat would come back and visit his family, and he would show up sometimes at gigs at Kansas City and scare the crap out of me, just by showing up.
Sure.
But he was always so supportive and so nice and encouraging. I mean, I think he's just always been that way.
Yeah.
But and then Wolfgang Muspiel was also the one who actually introduced me to Paul originally at an Electric Bebop Band gig, because Wolfgang was in the band for a
In the
while.
band, yeah.
And he just said, you should meet Paul. And I remember when he introduced me, he said, here's the guy, if you need a sub for me, this is the guy, And I was like, damn, Wolf,
Oh, cool.
But anyway, so Paul's like, I got this tour, and it was like about 3 months away from, and he goes, I wanted to just see if he could do it, because especially it seemed like a lot of the, you could say, old school guys,
Yeah.
they would hire on recommendation. They wouldn't necessarily need to hear you.
Yeah.
They trusted who told them,
Yeah.
about people, which is, I always found amazing.
That's quite cool, yeah.
But it really I think the percentages work out.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he said, yeah, are you free, in October? And I didn't even bother to look
Sure, of
my
course.
schedule. I just said, yeah, I'm free.
How cool.
I figured whatever might be there, I was just going to clear the decks.
Of course, yeah.
So that was 1997 in the fall. And when I joined the band, it was me and Rosenwinkel on guitars, and Chris Cheek and Chris Potter
Oh, yeah.
on tenor, and Swallow was playing bass. So that's when I
Oh,
also
yeah,
met
exactly.
Swallow. Yeah. And the thing is with Paul too, you got to understand that it wasn't like he ever fired anybody. What happened is that if somebody couldn't make a tour, like maybe both Brad or Wolfgang weren't free for that time period, so he seeks out someone else, and then if he likes you, you're kind of in the band.
Yeah, because you stayed in the band for a long time,
Yeah,
right?
that's the thing, Whereas Charlie was the opposite. Like once Liberation was picked, even if you had to sub, you were in the band, and you would come back.
Oh.
So it's interesting how band leaders have their different.
This is very cool. Amazing.
I think Paul was just more like, hey, this is what if I like you, you're in the band, you're here now. It's just like rotation.
Yeah. But because this band had like the most amazing guitar players since 1995, in my opinion.
I felt really lucky to be in that band, and because I played, first with Kurt, and then Ben joined in 2000, and and then Jakob a little later, and then Ben came. It was kind of a little bit of a trade-off there, and then. But all of them are just amazing, and I was lucky. And I felt like we all played very well together. We didn't really talk about it. We just listened to what each other was doing.
But how was that like on gigs? Did it just start a tune, or did it just call a tune, or did you like have set lists or?
Paul would make set lists.
He would. Oh, okay.
He would make set lists. What was interesting when we would play a week at the Vanguard is that he would, because you have so many nights in a row, it's kind of like he was somewhat on a mission to sculpt the set list that really worked best,
Oh, okay.
So the first night, it'd be like, you have to put something together because you don't really know. And it would often be just very close to what we would end up with, but he would move a few tunes around or take a tune out, put another one or something. so by even like night 2 or 3, we had our set list for the week, you know.
Aha, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Quite cool. But you also composed. I mean, like, how was he as a leader? Because you wrote that song "New Moon," I think, right? That's yours.
Yeah.
And then
Well, you
round
know,
up.
I think both Wolfgang and Kurt had written tunes for that band
Mm-hmm.
too, or contributed tunes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was before. So the first record I was on was Monk and Powell,
Mm-hmm.
which I supplied a lot of the Monk charts.
Yeah. Ah,
And then
yeah. Ah,
the other guys
okay.
were transcribing the Bud Powell tunes,
Oh,
and we
wow.
were just kind of putting it all together. But and then when we did the record Europe,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we recorded that after just 2 gigs of a tour in year 2000. And I remember before that tour thinking, oh, I wonder if I could write a tune that Paul would like, you know.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't, you know, I can never force that sort of thing. But about 2 weeks before we left, I just started messing around with what
New Moon.
ended up
Yeah.
being New Moon. It just kind of came out. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, you might like this. And it sort of sounds like a cross between Glorious Step and Time Remembered, or a Ralph
Yeah,
Towner
it's
tune or
beautiful.
something
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
like quite pianistic in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
So our first gig was in Dublin, and I remember because Paul, you know, knowing that we were going to recording, he kind of asked people to bring in he brought in some tunes, and the band personnel had also changed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's when Ben joined, Pietro Tonello
Yeah.
and Anders Christensen, and so Pietro brought in some Herbie Nichols. Uh, Paul brought in
Yeah.
some of his. So we were just kind of trying some tunes out at soundcheck, and we tried out New Moon. And I remember we played it, and I'll never forget this. Paul looking over after we did it, and he goes, "Yeah, Steve, yeah, sounds good, man." You know.
How cool. That's
So
beautiful.
that's how it happened.
So beautiful. That's quite cool. Yeah, it's such a nice also to hear with other guitarists, like in Paul's band, but also in other bands. Like I think your career in New York is somehow connected with playing with 2 guitarists also, right?
Yeah, I know because Joey, like, I mean, I've been in a ton of groups with that. Joey's band was me and Brad, which
Yeah,
I loved playing with
yeah,
Brad. You know, I mean, all those guys, Tony and Joe. I mean, that band had a lot of chemistry. It actually started out with a guitarist, Adam Levy, doing
yeah.
the
I saw that. Yeah,
first year when he's on this kind of recording, that little recording we did
yeah, yeah. I
in the
think I have that
beginning.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
sounded great too. You know, but what other 2 guitar bands?
Well, I listened to Rebecca Martin's Middle
Oh
Hope
yeah, because
and
she had Ben and I play on that.
that ballad record, that people
Yeah,
behave like
yeah,
ballads. People, yeah,
yeah. Oh yeah, there's 2 Rebecca. Yeah, there's one
yeah,
with me and Kurt, and then one with me and Ben. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like you somehow, ever since Paul's band, you're like with Kurt or with, you know,
I,
Brad or with Ben, like all you amazing guys, like playing.
I am totally like I. It was all so fun and cool.
But how do you approach playing with another guitar player? Because you always seem to listen so good that you don't get into, the each other's way. Like you're really like
Yeah. Well, I think that's exactly what it is. I think that all of those guys you mentioned are such not only just great players and musicians, but they're really great listeners,
yeah,
and they make room for the music, and realizing that 2 guitars can get it has the potential to not work.
yeah, yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, it can be a disaster.
But it doesn't really necessarily take that much effort to make it work. You just have to let the music be first, and not
Yeah,
like this idea of like, oh, I must play my shit,
yeah,
or something. You know.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's amazing. But
yeah.
on the other hand, like you have a really long relationship with bass players. Like I checked my discography of records that I have with you, and like you're on tons of bass records. Starting with Charlie first, like how did you get involved in Charlie's
Well,
Hayden's iteration?
actually, bass players and drummers.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
Drummers
So
also, yeah.
bass, I mean, actually, I was when I was really young in Kansas City, I was in a bass players band, bass players band, and Charlie was 2004. But I was in Mark Johnson. There's another group I was in with Rosenwinkel, which is Mark Johnson's bass. He didn't call it Bass Desires, but in '98, remember he did a record with Metheny and Frizzell and
Yeah, that's
Joey,
Sound of
Sound
Summer
of Summer,
Running. Yeah,
running.
that's a nice one.
Well, he wanted a touring band for that because all those other guys were so well known and so busy. And that's when, again, Metheny recommended me to him. And I
Ah,
remember going over to Mark's and playing. And then he said, well, who do you think would be, you know, he said, I need somebody who sort of has an understanding of sort of the Americana vibe,
mm-hmm.
And so, but I said, well, I'm playing with Kurt Rosenwinkel and Paul's band. And at that time, Kurt wasn't, I mean, he was known, but not like he is now.
Like that, yeah, yeah.
But and then I recommended Kenny Wollesen, who was my
Also,
buddy.
that was a quartet actually then?
So that was a quartet, and we never
Wow, man.
recorded.
Oh
We did
man.
like about 4 gigs,
Ah, same.
and
What?
then check this out. Mark couldn't get European promoters to book the band because they wanted the record band, which was totally unrealistic.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's impossible.
Which was that was a lesson that I learned at the time. I thought, wow, you would think that Mark, who's pretty well known, really well known,
Definitely, yeah,
that the promoters would just trust his judgment. It's the
exactly.
same music. I mean, come on.
Incredible. Wow, that's
Yeah, yeah.
that's almost sad, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but okay, yeah, different story.
Yeah.
But
So there was that. So Mark, and then John Patitucci's. Well,
oh
well then
yeah, yeah,
then Charlie, and then Ben, and then
Alec
Patitucci's
Alexis
electric guitar player.
Quadrado,
Yeah, Alexa Quadrado.
and the other one was
I know there's
Arthur
more.
Kell. Arthur Kell.
Arthur, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And then drummers, would be, Paul's Joey,
yeah,
Adam Cruz. I played on his
yeah.
record as a leader. I know there's others. I hate it when I get in the
Oh, Adam
situation.
Nussbaum. I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
see, don't let Adam see this.
No, no, no. Like, no.
But that's another two guitar
Yeah,
band,
yeah.
you know.
Amazing, right?
So so yeah, you're right. There's a lot of, but I love it.
No, it's like you
I
sound great on everything.
I never get tired of it.
Yeah, it's always fresh. Whatever. Even the Patitucci record with Adam Rogers, right?
Oh, Adam.
That's burning, man. That's
Ooh.
like incredible
Yeah,
dream
yeah.
rhythm section. You two guys are like quite different,
Oh, I
sound wise and
know.
playing
And
wise,
that's
and it's
why John wanted us, because he knew that we were really different. But also, when John takes solos, Adam and I are looking at each other like, he ouch.
yeah. This is yeah. That's too much. This is what Paul
Yeah,
told
I got to
me.
take a solo after that,
This is
help.
what Paul told me, man. Like McCandless, he did
Yeah.
a couple of tours with Bella Fleck and the Flecktones,
Oh, yeah.
and he said, like, we're playing, and then, I have to take a solo after Victor Wooten, and he's looking at Victor there, and he told me the story, and he was like, well, the crowd goes like, "Wah!"
Yeah.
What should I do now? And it's
Yeah.
Paul McCandless, like virtuoso, and like it's I can completely imagine. But no,
Yeah.
that
You
band is
need,
great at
but you
it.
need the balance because Paul's such a great melody. Like he plays such beautiful improvisations
Yeah,
that you kind of need the balance. You need, I mean, in a way, I almost hate to say this, but I will. John Patitucci's band, Adam and John have so much facility, and Brian does too. But Brian he also has this impressionistic way of playing,
definitely. Yeah,
so like it can be disguised, and so I fit somewhere in the middle of all that.
yeah, but that's good.
That's the
If
thing is that when you have that
yeah,
kind of balance, makes the music more interesting rather than having everybody be all one thing or another.
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like listening. I listened to the other day to a YouTube video of Gary Moore playing with B.B. King. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's like Gary Moore amazing. Like, I love him, but it's just like on the trill is
Yeah.
gone. And then
Yeah.
BB plays like 6 notes and I'm like, oh yes.
Oh, I know. It's just like a cool breeze on a hot day.
Yeah, quiet after the storm. It's like, okay, I'm gonna enjoy my drink now and just chill. It's like so, but that's like that band. It's so incredible. Like, uh,
Definitely.
but I just also want to ask you this, like, how did your relationship with, when did you start? I mean, you started playing with Ben Allison like such a long time ago. How did you guys hook up? Because when I listen to records of his, when you're playing on them, it seems like such a natural blend of,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, we originally met, do you know Stephen Bernstein,
sure,
he's a great band
yeah,
leader with Sex
sure,
Mob and Millennium. Well, he has a bigger group called Millennial Territory Orchestra.
yeah,
And Matt Munisteri is normally the guitarist in that band, but he did, just like a lot of gigs, but, different people can't always make gigs. And so Stephen asked, I subbed a few times on that, and Ben played bass in that band
okay,
whenever he could. So we actually met on one of those gigs in late 2004. Stephen had a residency at the Jazz Standard on Monday nights at that time with the band. And so Ben, I remember that night and that gig very well. And Ben and I think on the break and even before, we're sitting at that little bar when the Jazz Standard used to have this little bar in the back, like literally like about that.
yeah,
And we were talking and we were just kind of getting to know. We never really met, but then he called me up like several weeks later and said, "Hey, I'd like to start a group with." He had never had a band with guitar.
guitar, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And he said he said later, like when he was doing interviews, and he told me, he said the reason why he wanted me is because he heard me play a George Harrison like riff.
Ah,
I think I quoted "Come Together" like in one of the
really? How
because
cool.
Millennial Territory, like they're playing old tunes, but they're also doing kind of
It's a
a
fun
Prince
gig, kind of.
tune. Yeah, it's really so like the references are just flying all over the place. And but George Harrison is a big hero to me. I
Yeah,
love
definitely.
his feel and the way he would bend strings, and so that was really how it came about. And then so Ben started writing music with guitar in mind.
Mm.
And I would have to say honestly, at first, I wasn't used to he wrote kind of more angularly,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I had to kind of like, just like anybody, get to know sort of like, and he was also kind of not like, yeah, it's the first time I'm using guitar. I'm not even sure if this is going to work,
sure.
but it did. And pretty quickly, the more, I got inside of the tunes and we did some touring, then I just started feeling like, oh, wow, I love this music. And
Yeah,
it's really, really fun band.
yeah. It's like you sound. It's such a cool record to put on. Like, I mean, such cool records. Just because it's also so melodic. You can feel the influences of, I don't know, the Beatles and of jazz and of free
Yeah,
stuff and of
we
everything.
have a
It's
lot of the same things that we love.
yeah. So Steve, just to not keep you occupied too long, just
Oh, it's cool.
one last question that I'm want to ask you. Like, you've been occupied, I think, your entire life since the last probably 30 years or more with Monk, right? Because like
Yeah.
you played with Paul and your
Uh-huh.
own records and
Right. Well, I mean, again, it started in Kansas City with some friends, just like kind of everybody,
yeah,
you're starting to get into playing jazz repertoire, and then you can pretty much immediately find out about Round Midnight and Blue Monk and Well You
all
Needn't
the
and all that
tunes, yeah.
stuff. So, but I have these friends in Kansas City, Steve Million and Gerald Spates, as well as this great pianist that's no longer around, Russ Long, that were really into Monk and specifically his lesser known tunes.
Yeah,
So that's how I originally got exposed to, stuff beyond the ones, the
The
tunes
famous
that most
stuff, yeah.
people were aware of. And then when I moved to the Bay Area, I got to know a really amazing guitar player there, Randy Vincent.
Mhm.
This is another two guitar band,
Yeah,
actually.
wow.
It was called Evidence, and Bill Douglas was the bass player, and Robert Kaufman was the
Mhm.
drummer. And man, we were together for a couple of years, and we used to play at the old Yoshi's, but we specifically got together to learn Monk
Monk.
tunes. So that band was really where I actually learned to play a lot of the tunes on guitar, instead of just kind of hearing them and knowing them, but actually getting to know. And Randy and I were transcribing,
Like
you know.
solos or just the melody? So like
No, just the tunes,
the pets, yeah.
just so we could play them at rehearsal and gigs,
Oh, wow.
and so before you know it, I've accumulated these charts that we felt they were pretty accurate
Hmm.
at the time. Moved to LA, then I moved to New York, and I get in Paul's band, and then Paul, of course, is a Monk freak.
Yeah.
But before, like right around after my first tour with Paul, I kind of just on my own that winter. I didn't have a lot going on, and I just decided to take all the Monk charts out and basically kind of re-listen and tweak them,
Hmm.
and I found stuff that needed to be changed, So then I kind of wrote everything out and just kind of for myself, because a lot of the charts that are in fake books weren't so good.
Sure.
And then I would give some to some friends, and we used some of those charts when we recorded the Monk tunes. We use all the charts when we record the Monk tunes for Paul's record. But this one friend said, you should talk to Don Sickler,
Hmm.
who's a
Trumpet.
arranger,
Yeah,
trumpet
and Trump, yeah.
player, publisher, And I said, well, I'm not trying to do a book, I'm like everybody else. I just like Monk's tunes and want to learn them kind of correctly if I can, or at least start there.
Yeah.
But I eventually ended up calling him, and then I told him basically I wrote everything out, just kind of lead sheet, just like what I considered essential information without getting all monkophile,
Yeah.
like, oh, he plays this, If it wasn't part of the head or the melody, then I wasn't going to write it in,
Yeah.
It's like I just wanted, so I told Don, yeah, this friend said I should call. I've written, I have this. Why don't you come over? So I went over there and showed him, and he goes, wow, this is cool. He goes, he said, Hal Leonard has been wanting me to do a book of Monk's, all of Monk's tunes for a long time, but I never wanted to just do it by myself, because it's so much work.
So much work. Yeah.
So he said, if they want to do it now, would you want to do it? I said, of course, So, and but one thing I want to clarify, because I get credited for this book, but Don is as much, if not more so, the reason this book exists, because he's the one that had to deal with Hal Leonard. He knew the family. He had 16 photocopies of 16 original manuscripts
Really?
of Monk. Yeah. And it's mentioned in the book in the back, in different tunes. A lot of the earlier Blue Note tunes are the ones that he had.
Oh, wow.
And then he had also transcribed a lot of them over the years. So I think what he was thinking by kind of having my charts and having what he had is that we weren't going to start from scratch. We were going to start kind of from square two.
Hmm.
But that didn't necessarily mean that we weren't going to pretend that we weren't starting from, like we went through everything just to be sure, because we knew it was going to be a published book. And then Don came up with a lot of the good idea, like the really great idea of saying at the top, we need to say that this chart is based on this recorded version, just so there's no argument about it.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how that all came about. But so everybody thinks of me as the Monk expert.
No, but like, well, like I told you in the beginning, like when I hear you play, like I hear Monk. I don't know why, but like on guitar, you have this rhythmic displacements and intervals and jumping, and Like,
it's like a lot of other people that I mentioned. It's like it's bound to affect me because
but it's you,
listen.
it's guitar, and
Yeah.
it's like, but you can hum, like when I listen to a solo of yours, like I listened to Alexis Cuadrado's Metro also the other day, or
Uh-huh.
Visual, and actually I think I transcribed one of those solos years ago, and like it's singable. So,
Oh, cool.
What is it about Monk that you love? Let's say that.
Well, the thing about Monk that he was so misunderstood for so long because people thought, I mean, some musicians thought he was just sloppy or wasn't so good because he didn't play linear or something.
Hmm.
But he was actually, and by doing this book, it really became crystal clear to me how amazingly accurate he was with rhythm
Hmm.
and his intention with hitting notes together. That was all intentional.
Yeah.
He wasn't being sloppy. He was, when you hear it repeatedly, you're going, oh, he's not making the same as, he's doing that on
He knows
purpose.
what he's doing. Yeah.
So the thing is that he had this way of uh, shaping his own music and music that just felt so open and angular all at the
Yeah.
same time, and also very direct. Like it didn't necessarily seem like it was complex, even
Yeah.
though it can be. It
It can
seemed
be. Yeah.
very like, wow, that's amazing,
Yeah.
deceptively difficult.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah. Cool. Great, man.
Yeah.